purpose of Freethought Forum is to be vigilant to the encroachment of religion into government and to educate the general public as to what a freethinker is.
My thoughts give me power.
No scholar can map them.
No hunter can trap them. No person.
Hi, welcome to Freethought Forum. I'm your host, I'm Jeff Levan, and I bet you can't guess what topic we're going to talk about today. If you look behind me, you'll see the flag, and we thought we would discuss today some of the issues concerning the conflict between free speech and the flag, which have come up recently. As you know, that there was a 1984 case that made its way all the way to the Supreme Court, where a man who burned the flag at the Dallas convention, Republican convention, he won his case and caused a lot of excitement because many people were very upset that the Supreme Court decided to allow flag burning as a form of free speech. And of course there was a lot of noises made by a lot of politicians, George Bush not the least amongst them, who proposed amending the Constitution even to not allow flag burning or any form of desecration of the flag. We're going to discuss that today and some of the problems that creates concerning free speech. My guests today are Catherine Fahringer, and she's the director of Freethought Forum, and Camille Russell. And let me start out by saying, you as being a writer, freelance writer, I imagine this is pretty interesting to you.
Of course it is. It's freedom of expression.
So I take it you would not be inspired. This is your flag, by the way. I take it you would
on
not
my father's casket.
You would not be inspired then to burn it.
Not this one in particular. I'm not a flag burner, but I don't respect symbols more than I respect the ideas behind them. And when you start, I think we need to talk about the word desecrate.
Definitely, because
we are a secular nation with separation of church and state, which means that we have no sacred symbol in our land. Desecration implies sanctity. So I think
exactly a religious connotation is there when you say desecrate the flag.
How can you desecrate a secular
something
symbol
that hasn't been
especially when that symbol is supposed to stand for the epitome of freedom of the individual, and being as the First Amendment guarantees freedom of speech as long as it's peaceful.
I think it's interesting that recently in the papers there was some flag burning going on in the Pacific Northwest, maybe it was Seattle, and they had the FBI out there taking everybody's picture that was burning the flag. Now what is this liberty we're talking about?
Well, I think the reason why they're doing this recently is because Congress has passed the Flag Protection Act of 1989, which allows for a 1-year imprisonment and $1,000 fine maximum for, I don't know the exact categories, but burning the flag would definitely be one category. This is, they call it the Flag Protection Act.
Is it common for Congress to pass laws that are inconsistent with the Constitution?
Yes.
Yay.
When they know that it's beneficial to their appearance back home. You know, I mean, Senator Joe Blow from wherever is not about to say, "Oh, well, I stand up for it," when he knows that the polls are saying 80% of the people back home are saying, we ought to kill them flag burners, you know, and bury them.
Does anyone have any thoughts on why so many people support the amendment? I mean, that to me is a frightening
it started
prospect.
that way, I think. In the beginning, there was a lot of flack. People were very incensed, and they wrote letters to the editor by the ream, just scads and scads of them. They were all saying, oh, yes, I mean, string them up by the thumbs and do all these dreadful things. But I noticed as time went by, and they had time to reflect on what they were talking about and what it really meant, a lot of them changed their minds. And I saw many letters to the editor that said, I felt that way in the beginning. I have reflected, and I know now that although I am a veteran, and I still feel that the only flag worth dying for is one you can burn. That moved me very deeply. I don't think he had ever changed his mind, but he reflected very carefully on it. But there were others who said similar things in that they had showing that they had given it more thought and said, hey, wait a minute, what's more important, a piece of cloth that represents something or the actual thing that it's supposed to stand for? Freedom, expression.
There comes in a complexity here, such as facsimiles of the flag.
Well, yes, they were talking about desecration. Now, what's that going to do? George Bush had a birthday. Was it his birthday where they had the big cake made like a flag, and he was stuffing the flag down his gullet? Well, I found that rather offensive. Then the thing that I really took objection to was a few years ago at the Olympics, when the costume for the American participants was the flag. They were wearing it stretched across their breasts, and it looked awful. And I really took offense at that. I call that.
Every used car lot in town's got a flag.
Yes, indeed.
2,000 of them.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up. Abby Hoffman was charged with some law. He had worn a flag as a shirt. He had a flag made into a shirt. And when he was brought up on trial, this is back in the 60s, he produced pictures of Roy Rogers and Dale Evans wearing the same kind of a shirt and said, hey, well, what's wrong with this? You know, it's okay for them to.
What can you say about a guy who's got a stuffed horse in his living room?
And that's, there you go. And that goes back to the same thing. I was discussing with some airmen who I know who were very patriotic. And these guys, about 18, 19, just come out of high school and went into the service. And they're very offended that I would even consider doing a program on this. And I asked them, what's some of your opinion? He said, well, I'd just like to know why they would do that, you know?
Do what?
Burn the flag, you know? And I said to one guy, I said, so you don't think it ought to be allowed? He said, no. And I said, okay, well then, if it's not going to be allowed, then how do you get rid of old flags? Well, that's okay, because that's different. Well, why is that different? Well, because they're not saying something bad about America. I said, that's the point. The point is not the actual act of burning the flag itself. The point is that an opinion was made. And Connie Chung interviewed the man whose case, I think his name was Johnson or something.
Dallas guy.
The guy from Dallas. Now, he is a professional protester. He's a communist, and he admitted this. He did it because he has complete and utter contempt for the United States. So his was an act of hatred, and he was trying to convey that. Now, he probably would have gotten a lot more. He probably would have been able to say more and got his message across further, I think, better if he would have tried to do something even public access and state his point of view. But he knew that by doing this, he'd dramatize it, and he'd cause the conflict, see? And so while I don't agree with the guy at all, I thought it was interesting, you know, that
that's an important
the very
point,
country
though,
that he was criticizing was the one that gave him the freedom to do that, you know? It's amazing.
Well, as my idea just flew out of my brain.
I'm sorry.
No, I think there's an important point in what the flag means to somebody means something totally different to someone else. Yeah. While it may mean, you know, John Philip Sousa marches and waving flags and babies and apple pie and all that other assorted wholesome patriotism, it means something quite different to me. I think that the freedom of expression is the number one important area we're talking about here.
That's what I feel and see when I look at it, and that's what it means to me.
Here we are cloaked in our red, white, and blue.
Well,
but that doesn't tell anybody out there what's inside of our hearts.
No.
And I don't think we can presume.
Well, would you say that when Barbara Bush appeared at the Republican convention with a flag scarf that must have been 40 inches square draped over her, what would you say she was trying to get across? Now there again, I was
I believe
offended.
It's called wrapping oneself in the flag.
Literally. I really was taken aback by that. I thought it was just a bit blatant, let's face it. Hey, George and I are really patriots. Vote for George.
I think the act of dissenting is the ultimate patriotism. Whether one agrees with someone else's views or not, that one has the liberty and integrity to stand up and speak an unpopular view is a true patriot. Now, I'm no commie, and I will immediately put that disclaimer on there. And I think the guy who burned it, Johnson, defeated his own cause. He alienated people, as you said.
Yeah.
But it just means so much to have that freedom.
I think it's interesting also that
Not the countries.
that this guy was one of the 4 people who immediately after the law was passed, the Flag Protection Act, immediately after it was passed, he appeared on the steps of the Capitol and burned, Capitol of the Supreme Court, I'm not positive, and burned a flag again, him and 3 others. They arrested the other 3 guys, but they took him to the station and then released him. It's like he's a hot potato. I think they don't want to give him any more exposure than he's already had.
No Zsa Zsa bit on the flag. Huh?
Well, and the thing is also, since he's already been to the Supreme Court, having him come up again for the same offense, I think would just...
Double jeopardy.
Anyone that wants to bring it to the Supreme Court again is not going to want the same claimant there. And I thought it was interesting. Connie Chung, when she interviewed him, didn't get into what exactly he did believe in, which I wish she would have. But he was...
That's almost irrelevant, though, Jeff.
Well, I think it's interesting, because his whole point of view is negative. His whole point of view is just negative, the flag, and we don't know what he really stands for. He says he hates the country and everything. Of course, most people I talk to, 50 and over, say, well, America, love it or leave it. They remember that from the 60s. I think it's funny. You always have to have, with every right, you have a responsibility that goes with it. With the right to speak out and to say what you think, you have the responsibility to tolerate the other guy's point of view. You have to. And it goes both ways. And as far as you want the right to speak is as far as you should allow the right of the tolerance.
I think we need to address the countries which make it illegal to burn flags.
Good idea.
South Africa, Cuba, Red China, who our president was not so appalled with the incidents in Beijing that he managed, for commerce reasons now, you can mow down 6,000 students, and revisionist history is being read. But that strikes a very important chord.
Yeah, it's funny that we pulled economic sanctions against South Africa for a racist policy of apartheid, yet one that's against an ideology that should be near and dear to our hearts, as Americans, as free people. They mowed down those Chinese students, not because of their race, but because of what they chose to believe in and what they chose to think. That, I think, speaks pretty loudly.
I
think that says a lot, It's very easy.
Well, they were quoting Patrick Henry. And when they could do a little effigy of the Statue of Liberty, the Goddess of Liberty, I think we need to look at what this sucker means. Excuse me, folks.
To people.
I don't want to find a burning cross in my front yard.
Well, it gives me a lot of hope when I see what's going on in East Germany right now. I'm just amazed. Not only that they're taking down the wall and allowing people to travel, but that there's still people protesting in the streets and saying it's not enough. We want free elections too. Mm-hmm. We want to have another party, I think.
Well, that's like the toothpaste out of the tube. They'll never be able to get it back in now.
I hope so.
And let that be a lesson to our legislators, that there are a few of us out here that think and that reserve our right for individual liberty and to express ourselves freely and to think about those expressions.
Well, I was going to ask, how many flag burnings have you witnessed in your lifetime?
No, I've never seen one except on television. I think I would be pretty emotionally torn if I saw... I would not want to come upon that because I would be in the situation of wanting badly, intellectually, to respect this man's right to free speech, but also having a hard time with...
refraining your fist from hitting his face.
Right? I guess if it's his flag, I don't know what else I can say.
That's his freedom, too.
No,
it's not really.
Our rights end where the other guy's face
begins. That's right, toe-to-toe, and then that's it.
I think we need to mention Alan Reinfuss's essay.
Oh, I do too, definitely. That was, I had so hoped he would be here with us today. I had invited him to be on our show. I have his picture over there on the bulletin board.
And we need to congratulate the Express for recognizing
absolutely
this budding patriot.
Last year, an honorable mention went to a boy who wrote about Darwin, calling him a crazy man, and that God made the world in 6 days, and that evolution was a bunch of bunk. And he had honorable mention. You can imagine my surprise when this year Alan Reinfuss wrote this wonderful, it's called Mindless Recital, No Sign of Loyalty. And he says, I do not pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. For the same reason, I swear no loyalty to my old rust-brown corduroy pants or any of the quilts my grandmother had crocheted. He has a problem with crocheting and quilting, but that's all right. It is senseless. I feel no loyalty towards fabric of any persuasion for that matter. And then down at the end, he talks about some of the flack, I think, that he got from classmates. And he says, people died so you can say the pledge, I was told by a historically superior classmate. And Alan says, I had been under the impression that people had perished to ensure a choice. Silly me. Wonderful essay. And he was first prize winner.
Oh.
Very commendable.
I think
of a young man to
take an unpopular position and stick by it.
I did get to meet him. I had lunch with him, and we talked a bit about it. So,
how did his parents feel about it?
Well, he said they weren't too excited while he was doing it, but then when he won, it kind of gave them a boost. And his teacher, I think he said, now I could be wrong on all this because my retention is rather poor, but I think he said his teacher, when she read it, knew he was entering it, said, Alan, it's very good, but it won't win. She felt that the stance, well, she probably read last year's honorable mention, so she knew that it was pretty hopeless.
The one that said I was blown out of a guy's rib. Right.
Uh-huh. So that was, as I say, it was a big, happy, wonderful surprise when...
I was very, very stunned to see it.
And you wrote him, as I recall, or you wrote a letter to the editor.
I wrote a letter to the editor congratulating Alan and his parents and how proud they must be of him. I have a friend who teaches outside of San Marcos, and her 14-year-old son came home one day and said, I'm not saying the pledge. And she said, why? And he said, well, I really, she was not going to say, if this is just an empty act of rebellion, forget it, buddy. But she said, why? And he said, I'm not going to pledge allegiance to an imperfect organization. Bingo, he doesn't say the flag. Now they want to run him out of school on a rail.
Of course.
But that a 14-year-old is capable of
having their own conscience,
of acting on freedom of
thinking
conscience
about it,
and having
and
parents that support that.
Well, what bothers me too is I have two children, 5 and 7, and from the very first day, I mean,
and let's get
the pledge, and it kind of bothers me that I don't mind because hopefully, with me as a parent, they'll interpret that as pledge
tolerance.
as a pledge to the principles the country's founded upon. Hopefully, they'll get that out of my parenting if they get anything at all. But it kind of bothers me that they have this, and it's sort of like an indoctrination. It almost reminds me of the pictures I saw of the Cambodian schools when the Khmer Rouge came in and started preaching communism, and they separated all the kids and put them in these little classes and made them recite Mao, It's just...
Well, I have a problem with the pledge, and I have had for quite some time.
I bet it started in
I
1954.
I was out of the country. The last time I heard the pledge, it didn't have under God in it. And I came back to this country and went to some function, and they said, now we will say the Pledge of Allegiance. And I was finished, and people were still saying something, and I thought, what has happened here? There was something I was out of sync, definitely. And that's when I found out about it. And it's turned it to me now from a pledge to a prayer under God.
It comes right after indivisible, which I thought was interesting, The indivisible, the most divisive thing in the world is religion. All you have to do is look at the Middle East,
Right.
People basically worshiping the same God, basically, the
Good
same
point,
God,
Jeff.
Supposedly, and yet it's more divisive than anything. People shooting each other and killing each other over
just
it.
as the flag burning amendment is contrary to the Constitution, so is inserting under God in a Constitution which guarantees religious liberty.
Right. Besides, it was just better the other way. Anyway, it flowed better.
Well, it was done as a
spoke
reaction.
Better. It was,
It was
I know,
done
it's
in a
the McCarthy.
McCarthyite reaction,
Yeah.
same as the
Oh,
under
the
God
coin-
motto in the
Oh,
coins.
the coins. A lot of people
was-
don't know this.
was
They don't
finally
realize.
put on all the bills.
Do these people
Cost
that
a
are
bomb, too, I might add, a taxpayer dollar.
Yeah.
do these people that are really inclined toward wrapping themselves in this, do they ever read anything?
Well, yeah, I'm sure they do, but
I mean, I'm not talking Ladies' Home Journal. I'm talking.
yeah.
What are you talking? Something.
Well, I think they're more responding on an emotional level more than on a intellectual level. I mean, they're responding, hey, look, you know, I fought for that flag, therefore, you know what I mean? I shouldn't let
But
anybody
that's
burn
wrong.
it.
They did not fight for the flag. They fought for the freedom that that flag symbolizes.
represents.
Oh, I talked to one guy who was in Vietnam, and he said, you know, I didn't fight for that flag. You know why I fought? I fought because Uncle Sam sent me a letter and said,
Speaking of which, Uncle Sam wears the flag.
all I had a choice, you know, all I had a choice of was, you know, he said, go to Vietnam or go to Canada. I couldn't go to Canada. I'd never be able to come back home and face my dad, so I went to Vietnam. I went because the state told me. It didn't have anything to do with the flag, you know, and that was
Or
kind
mom
of
and apple
interesting.
pie and all the other things.
Well, I think a lot of people went to Nam out of patriotism. A lot of them went because of a draft card. But what is patriotism? That's something that needs to be addressed. Is it a herd of sheep bleating the same?
Yeah, the same sound.
It's not the way. It's not the. If you read the founding fathers, that's definitely not their concept of government. Their concept of the government was, hey, if need be, have another revolution. That's even in the Texas Constitution.
Now you start getting into the Second Amendment, we're going to have a war up here.
Yeah, do you know what I'm saying? You know, I mean, that's one of the reasons why they had the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. You know, was because so that no one could
Well, to protect us from the government.
could oppress us. Yeah, that within and without. That's, as a matter of fact, that's even in the oath that you have to take for civil service or for the government. You know, to protect this country and the Constitution from enemies within and without. Where do they think the within comes from? You know, some people interpret that as to mean you have to stomp everybody who burns the flag. I don't. I look at it as a means of competing in the free marketplace of ideas. You know, competing fairly, which means tolerating the other guy's idiotic views, if you consider them to be idiotic. You know, you don't have to agree with them.
So where did you come up with these relics?
I bought them at a garage sale, believe it or not. Yes.
Is this
The
a
flag
children's book?
of our United States, and this lovely one is wartime.
Yeah.
So it's the story of Betsy Ross.
And well, I think the play. Oh goodness, all this Japanese is disconcerting in here. But this is about Hirohito, by the grace of heaven, Emperor of Japan. This is very interesting. It really is. The instrument of surrender. It's funny things people put in garage sales. I treasure this sort of thing.
The Greening of America has been in every garage sale.
Oh yes, and the Reader's Digest condensed books. Believe me, you don't go anywhere and not find those.
We
Well,
wouldn't have props for ours.
It's a shame. We really did want to have someone here who would take this opposing view to say how they felt and why
Would
they
y'all
felt
like me to
so
play the devil's
strongly.
advocate?
Well, I
you-
called the American Legion and tried to get someone on. It was kind of short notice. I'll have to try again, and possibly we can get someone on.
I
who
really
has a
would
very
like to have
strong
a
point of view.
dialogue.
Well,
with
we
the
had hoped,
opposing
and Jeff was still waiting as of yesterday, I think, for a return call, which
It's kind
never
of hard to
came.
fathom what the other point of view is and play the devil's advocate, if you'll pardon the expression on this show, to take the other point of view.
We have a problem with our vocabulary
to take
from
the other
time
point
to
of
time.
view, you know. And
Oh, I think people get caught up in the symbolism, and they can't get past.
Well, it's
They can't get past the reality of.
It's the band playing and the flags waving and that drumming, and it's rum-tum-tumming and making you feel you've got to go out and do something. And I think
it's an appeal to emotion.
Wonderful.
I thought an interesting point also about the guy who burned the flag originally, and I thought this was something they should have tried to get him on instead of the desecration aspect. It was someone else's flag. He stole the flag.
Stephen Kellman wrote a very good column on that in the Light.
Excellent. Right up there on the bulletin
Basically,
board.
he was saying that George Bush was more concerned about private property
Very,
than.
very brilliant man, very thoughtful.
He's agreed to be on the program, by the way.
Wonderful.
So that's
That's exciting.
so we're
Not
gonna
only
try to
that,
get
we-
him on.
to that.
he also deals with the use of the term desecration, which has
he does.
absolutely no place.
Well, you know, it's still illegal in Texas to destroy desecrate a venerated object.
What, pray tell, is a venerated object?
It could be
well,
like our good friend Omar Gonzalez, who
who dumped the Virgin Mary in the wastebasket.
I'm sure that his detractors didn't know about that law, or they would have had him up before. More than just the
but that law wouldn't last on the books.
It has. It already has been used. It was used last year by an atheist against an atheist in Houston.
What did he do?
Supposedly,
I'm flabbergasted.
They said that he defaced a Bible, which was public property on display outside of a courthouse.
That wasn't the tasteful thing to do.
I certainly wouldn't do that, but I will admit to this. Whenever I see a Gideon, which is delivered by the Gideons who insert themselves everywhere, including the public schools, I have little stickers that I carry with me when I stay in a hotel. And if they don't remove the Bible from my room, if I request it, I put one of these. It says, warning, this book could cause...
literal belief in this book.
Yes, literal belief in this book could cause serious physical and can be dangerous to your health and your physical and mental health, doesn't it say?
Something like that, yeah.
Because everyone knows, you've certainly read articles, I'm sure, where it said, well, I killed this person because God told me to. People kill their children because God told them to. They do pretty dreadful things.
Yeah, I think that, like what you're saying about desecrate, that's important too, because it goes back to how strongly we feel about separation of church and state. It also goes back to that emotional aspect. There are a lot of people claiming that this is a Christian nation. And by trying to make the flag an icon, they're doing, in essence, the same thing. They're attaching a holiness to it, which has no place in a free society.
I think we all need to really reflect, and this is you folks, great TV land in the sky. Our civil liberties are being eroded daily.
I feel that way. I feel very threatened. There's a situation in Austin that's causing me some grief with $100,000 of tax money going to refurbish St. Edward's Catholic
University.
School. Yes, for the purpose of bringing the
press is getting hauled to task on things.
Yes, definitely. There's been erosion of rights, of property rights. Is no longer necessary to have a warrant to search someone's house under some of the drug laws that have been passed in the last 5 years. It's no longer necessary.
Whatever happened to the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution?
Probable cause. That's what they use.
Wow, but that's scary.
So maybe there'll come a time where we may be inspired to burn the flag. I don't know. If it gets to a point where the flag represents something other than what I've come to know and love as our country, there may come a point where more people would be willing to trash it. When it is no longer a symbol of what it represents, what it should represent. If it comes to represent something else, perhaps it does take a second look. Well, we're just about out of time, so I wanted to go ahead and thank you both for being here today and encourage both of you to keep
express
on
ourselves.
Talking about it. That's right.
Well,
keep writing.
Thank goodness we can do it here in public access.
You at home, be sure and write your congressman. They will write back, and they will let you know where they stand on this issue. It's very important that you let them know. One handwritten letter means so much to them. Thank you very much. See you next week.
I think as I please, and this gives me pleasure.
My conscience decrees, this right I must treasure.
My thoughts will not cater
To duke or dictator, no person can deny